Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next City of Echoes chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 5. Once again, if you are a YouTube channel member or patron at the $5 tier or higher, you will gain early access to other videos in this series, and if you want to help support the channel. So yeah, getting into this one here, so this obviously follows up our last chapter where we of course had this very nice conversation between Susu and Jin, highlighting the positives of things aren't so bad in Ba Sing Se after all, whereas this chapter is meant to kind of in a way kind of bring that back down to earth in terms of like, and then a few days later Jin encounters a big fight that happens in Ba Sing Se, and then something quite bad happens within the Wen family. So that's what we're going to get into here. So we highlight immediately that a few days pass since the conversation that they had on top of the apartment. Cookie Bun Day has just happened, so a lot more work done at the bakery here from Jin, so she's tired. She helps Gong Gong complete his commissions and package them for delivery, and then she's waiting in line to pick up the dinner for herself and Gong Gong, and she's hearing from everyone about all the rumors about the Avatar. So Susu gave her a bit of an early access almost to these rumors. Now, a few days later, everyone's talking about the Avatar. People think he's like a hulking beast of a man. Some people think he can read people's mind. But then we get the words of someone who might actually be believable. I've seen him, a nervous looking man, sitting beside his cabbage cart. Looks up from his bowl of rice. He's just a boy with his friends running around causing havoc. The city is doomed if he's found his way here. No one really believes him. All the kids are like, you've never seen him, old man. He has, and he unfortunately has to kind of leave at that point. But yeah, that's just a quick kind of opener to the chapter. Then, as she's walking up the road in or around where Pao's family tea house is, she sees that a fight's happening. There's a bit of a crowd, a door bursts open, someone comes flying through. She has no idea initially who's fighting. She gets a rough sense of like swords and that, okay, it's two guys. What exactly is going on here? Then we get, obviously this is very a reminder here. We see this scene kind of play out. This is the fight between Zuko and Jet and Lee, whatever way you want to frame it. Jin actually witnesses this happen, and we get like, please son, you're confused, you don't know what you're doing. Mushi, Iroh says this, of course. At this point there's a little bit of a break in the fight, and this is where Jin actually gets a good look at the two people fighting and realizes that, okay, they're two teenagers basically the same age. She doesn't know who the one with the hook swords is, but she recognizes the other one as being the new server at the tea house, the one with the scar. So pretty cool stuff here as we get this very obvious connective tissue. So if you hadn't been aware of where exactly we are, now you know exactly where we are, because this is a super memorable scene, of course. And so immediately we hear her, Jin, kind of zone in basically on what Jet is saying. The Fire Nation is trying to silence me, and like her and the crowd are like, wait, why is he talking about the Fire Nation? You're not meant to talk about the Fire Nation openly. And accusing like these new up and coming kind of tea makers in the city of being Fire Nation. What's going on here? She hears the crowd kind of talk about, if he's Fire Nation, why isn't he burning him with his firebending in the fight? Look at his face. He's the one who's been burned. Like, what are you talking about? They're refugees. We also address the idea of like, why aren't the guards who are also watching the fight getting involved? And this is the way they treat these fights, or interpersonal conflicts. They don't get involved unless blood is spilled. And of course in this fight we know no blood does get spilled. But I guess because the Fire Nation gets brought up in the words being said, suddenly the Dai Li appear, and sort of the crowd kind of disperses a little bit. They let the Dai Li through, of course, and this is where, yeah, Jin talks about them in terms of like, Susu warned me about them. They are officially the cultural protectors of Ba Sing Se. They work directly for the Earth King, but everyone knows that you don't speak of the Fire Nation or the war, because if you do, you might disappear. And so that's kind of what's effectively happening here. This is the disappearing effectively of Jet, pretty much. So yeah, Jet gets arrested, and we get, the poor boy's confused. We're just simple refugees. Manager Feng, aka Pao, is like, this young man wrecked my tea shop and assaulted my employees. The best, the finest tea maker in the city. We get that whole situation. But yeah, as he's taken away, of course, he screams out his really obvious stuff of like, you don't understand, they're Fire Nation, you have to believe me. And we get Jin's opinions on this, which I think is quite interesting. I find myself watching the server with the scar, the thought flickering again across my mind. How does someone tell if they are Fire Nation or not? What if they are among us, watching, lying in wait? The thought makes me feel ill. Ba Sing Se feels like a fragile vessel, the cracks starting to appear on the surface. I worried when I first arrived here how long it would take until the Fire Nation army reached these walls. Maybe it's starting now. And then later on, I return home with our cold dinners, still uneasy at what I witnessed tonight. The accusations ringing in my ears. They're firebenders. And so it's this idea that, again, this is prior to Jin asking Lee out on the date. But in her head, she is actually kind of considering what Jet said a little more than I think the rest of the crowd is. She's actually lost in thought about this in terms of like, what if he is Fire Nation? And kind of like, what exactly does that mean? We'll get more context as the chapters go on about why she doesn't immediately leap to like, okay, this is potentially dangerous, but like why she's not all the way down that path, and why it's something that's more of an interesting topic than fully all about the danger of that situation. It's quite interesting. But then we go into the second half of the chapter. So the next morning she heads over to the Wen bakery and sees that it's not up and running. There's no smell, the fires aren't lit. Yang, the boy who usually kind of maintains the fires, is outside. He doesn't know the full story of what happened, but he says there's been a lot of crying upstairs. Because again, the Wen bakery is like the lower floor of their apartment and they live on the top. So that's the whole situation there. Jin gets inside and she definitely can tell something has happened here. No one's really talking kind of initially. Everyone is lost in thought. Mama Wen's red-rimmed eyes. She's been crying. So what's going on? We received some bad news. This is when Susu arrives and says, Father is currently in jail for disruptive behavior. She continues on. The fool threw a fit and tried to strangle official Chang when he came to collect what he gambled away. And she, has called her father a fool here, so her mother's kind of like, Susu, he is your father. And she spins on her mother and is like, that man is no father of mine. And she is really like super angry, anger finally exploding. He already does what he wants with his life, wasting whatever he makes drinking and gambling. But this time he's gone too far. He didn't only ruin his life, he ruined all of ours. And none of them can really respond to this because she is correct. And this is when Grandmother Wen speaks up. My granddaughter is right. My good-for-nothing son has always caused trouble. The only sensible thing he did was marrying someone with a good head on her shoulders. Jin then gives her own kind of impressions of Mr. Wen. She hasn't seen him too many times. She doesn't tend to stay around very long when he is around, because she gets the impression he doesn't like her, kind of sees her as another mouth to feed, and that he's not really the quote-unquote man of the house, because the others all do kind of all the work, basically. So she asked the question, what did he actually do here? Because Susu, in her anger, gave the impression of like, okay, roughly what happened, but what specifically happened? So she's told here, he put the bakery up as collateral, certain that he would win it all, that he was going to bring us fortune. It's never been his, but Ba Sing Se is a city that only acknowledges the men, never the women who keep everything running. I hate this place, I hate its ridiculous rules and restrictions. And no one, once again, can respond to this. And Jin asks, but if you lose the bakery, what will happen? This is when Susu, everyone knows that this is bad. The Wen family run the bakery. If they don't have the bakery, they are in a disastrous situation here. So this is worst case scenario, basically. Susu then says, I'm not going to let them take the bakery. I have a plan. And so you can see, if you've read the description for the book, you can see that description is beginning to kind of come to light here in terms of, okay, what way can they possibly get out of this situation? What way can a debt be very quickly kind of repaid? We're going to get our answers immediately in the next chapter, but we see the turn, like I mentioned, the idea of the happiness of how things ended with Susu and Jin in the last chapter, talking about their dreams for the future, and now all of a sudden, in a way, the stability that both families in a way had, Jin through the Wen family and the Wen family with their bakery, just gone now, all because of the actions of the father, who seems to be like almost barely involved in the family, and his mistake has basically ruined them here. But Susu has a plan. She's gonna basically make the sacrifice here to protect the family, and this is then gonna force Jin to make her move, our main character, of course. So yeah, really good chapter here. I love this one because you get the really cool reference of seeing the Jet and Zuko fight from Jin's perspective, setting up a little bit more ahead of when actually the date scene is going to happen. Like what's going on in Jin's head while that's happening. They're clearly building up to that. But then the turn of just like Jin showing up the next day and just that, like in a way, in the course of one night, someone making one gambling decision wrong, the family's lost their kind of livelihood here. Absolutely tragic, of course. So yeah, the stuff is finally getting going here, and especially with the next chapter, we're really going to be in the proper, the plot is in action here. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on Chapter 5 of City of Echoes, but otherwise, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.